In 2012, I made, like I said, the original Bitcoin coin. It's probably the most famous coin in the world today. You've seen it a time or two, I would guess, along with everyone else in the world that's seen it in a scam email or something like that. So it's a very famous coin, and it's, I pat myself on the back that I designed it.
Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, your host of UnWoke.Academy. Joining me today, I have Bobby Gray. How am I going to set up Bobby Gray? I told Bobby I'm either going to be a great host for this or a complete flop, because in spite of having a finance background, crypto is a subject that is kind of alien to me. I don't spend a lot of time in crypto, but I know a lot of you are very interested in it. So through a mutual friend, Bobby was introduced to me, and I want to give a quick bio. Bobby is the creator of Texit Coin, which is TXC. And if I understand correctly from the bio that was given to me, he had some kind of background that we're going to delve into in the development of Bitcoin. If I understand that correctly.
You're close. We'll clarify. Yeah.
We'll clarify. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to be relying on you for a lot of clarification in this one.
Sure.
And one of the key elements
guy in the crypto industry that no one has ever heard about. That's the best way to introduce my strange and interesting background.
I can't wait to delve into this. I'm really enticed.
How much time do we have?
This mutual friend set us up and said, hey, jump into a podcast and just start talking. And one of the key elements that struck me, as soon as I saw that Bobby is working on developing crypto in a way that is hands-off to Wall Street and DC, I was like, that guy I got to meet. I have to know Bobby. Please, let's get him on the show. So I've already steered us potentially a little off course with reference to Bitcoin, because
I think you're exactly right. You're exactly right. You're
good
on the right track.
Good. That said, Bobby, tell us more about you, your background, and all things cryptocurrency.
I come from probably a similar world to what you're used to with precious metals. That's really my background. I've got into the money conversation back in 2007 when I woke up, along with much of the rest of our community, when I learned that something was wrong in the world and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I did all the research I could, and I went down every rabbit hole I could find. And at the bottom of every one of these conspiracies or injustices that I came across, it was always money. It's always money at the bottom of all that. So of course the question is, well, who controls the money? If money's the problem, who's to blame, right? I come across the creature from Jekyll Island. I come across the somewhat not so secret history of the Federal Reserve System, and I begin to learn that our money is not so federal. And it's lost 95% of its purchasing power over the last 100 years. At least that's where it was back in 2007. We've gone even further since then. And so I decided back in 2008 that I had to be the guy that was going to fix the money problem. And so I started my own currency. I created the American Open Currency Std in 2008. And I was manufacturing gold, silver, and copper coins as an alternative form of payment. I was very successful with it. In fact, I did so well that in 2012, I was invited to testify in the U.S. Domestic Monetary Policy Subcommittee regarding parallel currencies, the roadmap to monetary freedom, in front of Texas Congressman Ron Paul. And so that was a nice little feather in the cap for me, excuse me, as I continued on this journey of trying to reestablish precious metals as a form of, current money, a form of private voluntary barter currency. So that's really where I began, in a world probably similar to what a lot of people that understand that something's wrong in the world are also interested in: gold and silver.
Excellent. Well, thank you for taking that on, because it's huge, and I think it's on a lot of people's minds. So there are a couple of things that occur to me to ask about. And again, I'm going to preface this by saying that I will be, my audience is probably a best guide here, because I'm going to ask these questions in lay terms because I don't know how else to ask them.
Sure.
It seems to me there's sort of a fork in the road. People are very concerned about purchasing power as we go forward and as we tackle issues like monetary policy and global trade and those kinds of things. But at the same time, there is some fear and skepticism around digital currency. And
Sure.
I want to key in early in this conversation on how we insulate things like those, like currency, from government interference and meddling.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's a big leap from the original introduction to figuring out how and why people should actually care about and or pay attention to and or get involved with digital currencies. So let me see if I can span that gap real quick and tell you
Please.
that in 2008, when I started my silver currency standard, somewhere else on planet Earth, somebody also was starting their own currency by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto, a name you've probably heard a time or two, right?
Yeah.
And I find it quite coincidental that two people, as far as I'm familiar with, on planet Earth, both started alternative currencies back in 2008. What's the big difference? I went physical. I went backwards. I went, towards historical money, gold, silver, copper, money that's worked as a medium of exchange for thousands of years. Whereas Satoshi, again, we'll use quotes because it's probably not a real name, but Satoshi went digital. He went into the future that people from the precious metals community really didn't understand or trust. And so I went physical, they went digital, and voila, here we are today. I was very successful with my currency, but Bitcoin today is an industry. Bitcoin today, cryptocurrency today, is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And so I think it's not coincidental that we both saw the same problem back in 2007, 2008. We both wanted to be a part of a solution. One of us went digital, the other went physical. And it gives me real firsthand knowledge about what the problem is, what the tools are that are at our disposal to deal with this problem, and evaluate now, 17 years later, which one of those was more successful. And so coming back to the question of purchasing power, like I think we can all agree that something is fundamentally wrong with money. The money that we've known and loved for the last 100+ years, the paper, dollar, the Federal Reserve note, which is a lot more digital today than we probably even stopped to think. Money that we know and love for our entire lifetime has gone way down in value. One of the things that we talked about in US Congress in 2012 is like, gold and silver and alternative currencies, they don't have protections that the government affords, like FDIC. And I say, imagine if you put $20 back in 1913 in a safe deposit account. Yeah, the FDIC is going to definitely guarantee that $20 is still going to be there today, even if the bank goes belly up. But what's the purchasing power of that $20 going to look like? In 100 years, the $20 doesn't go anywhere at all. $20 back then was an ounce of gold. And so you can look at the fact that that $20 ounce of gold from 1913 all the way up to today is now worth $3,000. And so the FDIC, the government, the big brother, our overlords, might be able to guarantee that the deposit's going to be there, but they have no ability whatsoever to guarantee the value of that deposit. And I would go as far as saying they've eroded the value of that deposit, maybe even intentionally, over the last 100 years to get us to where we are today. So we're seeing a problem with money. I think it's easy for anyone and everyone to agree that something's wrong with the money. In fact, one of the stories that is near and dear to me was a picture of a silver quarter. And this picture of the silver quarter came out around like 2013, 2014, 2015, when the minimum wage discussion was a hot topic in the headlines. People are saying, we really need to increase this minimum wage. And the meme that I saw, this image of this quarter, said, in 1964, silver was what we used as coinage, and a quarter was about a quarter of an ounce. Not exactly, but about a quarter of an ounce. In 1964, the minimum wage was $1.25 per hour. That's 5 silver quarters. Well, today, 5 silver quarters is worth about $35. And so, again, as we think about money, we don't think about the money's physical form or its ability to hold its value over time. And so if we look at something like gold or silver that has historically been respected as money for thousands of years, that does a really great job of holding its value. So again, all of this is coming back to the same idea that something is fundamentally wrong with the money. We all agree that there's a money problem, right? And so now we look at what our solutions are. And I'm the guy that went down the silver path. I'm the guy that knows firsthand exactly how to get gold, silver, and copper to be used again as a currency. and I was very successful doing that, but it was a lot of work. Manufacturing silver coins, manufacturing enough coins to service the needs of the marketplace, it's a gigantic challenge. And so when you think about money and you say, okay, well, this is one end of the spectrum, physical coins that you can carry and hold in your hand, right? And this is an interesting one too, because I don't know if you can see it here, but it's an Andrew Jackson coin. There it is.
Nice.
And on the back of it, it's got his famous quote about the banks, by eternal God, I will rout you out. And Andrew Jackson was very famous for killing the second central bank in the United States. So anyway, you look at digital currency and you say, I don't understand it. I don't like it. I don't trust it. It's different from what we're familiar with for our entire lives, what we've understood and respected as money. Even in the day that money is mostly digital, we still have a card that's in our wallet that we can tap to pay or swipe or chip scan or something like that. So now the idea of trusting a currency that's in the cloud somewhere, that's completely formless, that doesn't have any kind of physical entity to it whatsoever, that's a real challenge. And so I think a lot of us get stuck trying to understand how money that has no physical form whatsoever, no central authority, no database of records and transactions. Like, how is it that could even be in the conversation of valuable as a form of money? And that's one of the things that I did back in 2012, where I gave, this digital formless thing a physical identity for the first time. So I created the original Bitcoin coin back in 2012. It's probably the most famous coin in the world today. But that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a bridge between these two worlds of physical money that we're very used to for our entire lifetime, and digital money, which is out there somewhere else. But that's my little way of trying to jump us ahead in the conversation from my background in history and alternative and complementary currencies, and what we're looking at today, which is really the rise of Bitcoin and digital currencies. And I think one of the things you mentioned is like, well, how do we keep the government and the mega banks and the mega corporations and the foreign nations and all those guys from meddling around in this thing? And that's exactly what I was concerned about as well. And that's why I started Texacoin, which I'm thinking we'll get into in just the next few minutes.
Thank you for answering that question in the way that you did. It seems to me
with a long-winded answer.
No, it was the perfect answer, because my question was a little bit ill-timed. And in kind of getting my head around the distinctions and the need for commonality between some sort of physical representation of currency,
right?
Or at least psychologically for us,
right? Because if we can't mentally identify it, if we can't understand it by visualizing something in our mind, it becomes almost impossible to wrap our mind around it at all.
And frankly, I'm going to guess, I'll speculate about the current mindset of 20 and under, but the concept of a purely digital currency is actually, for me at least, kind of terrifying. And especially when you start getting into who controls it and who controls the value. And then you can start, I don't want to get into too many rabbit hole warrens, or we will have like an epic 5-hour podcast here, but you can get into geolocation and use and all that stuff, which candidly, I get a lot of questions about.
Well, let me try to shortcut that for you, if I may, and just say that the reason that I got out of precious metals was not because I love digital currency, not because I finally decided that I had it all wrong. It wasn't because I wanted to jump from something that was very difficult to something that was very easy. It's not because I wanted to jump from something that I only make $1 a coin on over to something that had an unlimited amount of money that I can make per unit. It was because I realized something that you just mentioned, which is young people today, the 20 and unders, their whole world is on their phone. You can't talk to them about even a physical bank account. My daughter doesn't have a bank account. She's got a Venmo account. She uses Cash App. Kids these days, like, they're completely unbanked. They're digital all the way. And so, if you put $20 bills in front of them, I don't even know if they'd be able to count it or make change. So the realization that got me out of the world of gold and silver coin manufacturing wasn't that I wanted to jump to something that was easier or better. It was the realization that the world's not making any new physical gold, silver, copper coin buyers. And so I might be manufacturing a product that's going the way of the dinosaur. I might be selling fax machines for all I know. The world's not making any new gold and silver coin collectors. And so when I finally sat down and acknowledged that, I said, if I want to be successful at my mission, and my mission is honest money, the tools that I've chosen, the medium of exchange that I chose is gold, silver, copper. But if I want to be successful at the mission, which is establishing an honest alternative complementary form of currency, I got to use the tools of our time. And if children are the future, then the future is going to be digital. And if I dig my heels in the ground and I resist that, as I've done for 15, 16 years, I'm going to miss it. I'm not only going to miss it, I'm not going to have a profit opportunity. I'm not going to be able to have a conversation with young people. And this is now the growing part of the market. And if I continue to resist that, I'll miss it. And I won't be successful at all in my mission. And that's what I would give to you and your viewers to consider as to why we should be having this conversation in the first place. Because kids, their whole world is here on the phone. And if we don't use tools that they understand or that they have access to or they're interested in engaging, we're just going to continue to miss it. And that would be a real shame.
It would be a shame, and it also represents another type of lost opportunity. And I'm going to preface what I'm about to say with an experience that I had a few days ago. I was at an event where there were food trucks.
Okay.
And I'm a longtime advocate of cash and mom and pop shops and those kinds of things. So I always carry some cash with me. And I went up to the food truck and ordered a couple of burgers and fries and stuff for my wife and me.
Yeah.
And I handed them, I don't know, $40 or something. And they there was a little bit of a pause, and the young guy running the grill, and there were people stacked up behind me, and he takes the $40 and I'm waiting. And then the food came, and then I'm waiting. And eventually he came back, and I was like, hey, I don't know if you forgot that I'm waiting for some change. He was like, yeah, somebody ran out to go and get currency.
Right.
So I felt bad at that point. I mean, I was trying to do the right thing and make sure that they kept more of the money. But
yeah, exactly.
I totally actually inadvertently gummed up the works, because the guy had to run into a local store and be like, hey, remember these bank notes? Do you have any more of these in smaller denomination? It was kind of like that. So eventually, halfway through,
they look at you like you're some sort of weird drug dealer. Where did you get this? On a dark back alley somewhere? Who's got cash? What are you doing?
It kind of was like that, but there's actually method to my madness.
Yeah.
The reason I do that, and this is where I want us to go in the conversation, I'd like your opinion on this. The reason I do that is I know that if I'm out shopping and buying goods and services, every time I swipe a card, some companies that I really don't like, I don't like them for a reason. Yeah. And it's follow the money stuff. Visa, MasterCard, Amex, places like it.
They're taking a little bit right off the top.
Yeah, it means less money to that business, and it means more funding for those companies that I think are doing really bad, nefarious things, especially to Western values in the United States. So why in the heck, every time I'm buying a couple of burgers, which are, I mean, why am I paying $37 or whatever, or $34?
Right.
That's another
supporting an endeavor. Somebody, put their time and effort into launching that business to bring you a quality product. They got to charge something for it. They got to make some money to keep that machine going, for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly my thought process. And if I can give them more of the money and keep some of the money away from Visa, MasterCard, and Amex. So that brings me to my question. When you get into transaction, and it's clear and obvious, if you have, and you held up a silver coin, I would actually struggle in the same way as those young people in that food truck. If you handed me that silver coin and I had to make change somehow,
and give you
some smaller denomination back.
Right. But it doesn't work.
it doesn't work. Or I get like a little saw out and cut a piece of.
Right. You break your coin into like pieces of 8, that's what they used to have. But that's a real challenge. The more physical you get, the bigger the challenge is, whether it's making change for a $20 bill or, dividing an ounce of silver into 10th or, grams or something like that. Like, man, it's foreign stuff. Long ago, I'm sure it was more comfortable, but still physically challenging because you have to carry around pockets full of this stuff. So it's an issue. It's a real issue. But
So
man, I
where do-
want to win you over to the crypto conversation because you are so ripe. You're so ready for it. You're so ready for it because everything that you said, those nefarious institutions, that's exactly what this is. Take your example of the 3% fee one step further. You take $100 bill downtown to Main Street, right? And you spend it with merchant number one. They get 97 out of the $100, and they take it and they spend it at merchant two. They're going to get like 94 and a half out of the 97. And then you keep going 30, 40 times that money changes hands. It's gone.
Yep.
It's gone. Where did it go? Like the money just disappeared. It went to the banks. It went to Visa, MasterCard. Like these guys, they're so big. Their numbers are so huge. It's breathtaking to stop and think about. Like that's where all the money goes, to the banks. Now, okay, they provide a convenient service so that that guy doesn't have to go out and run and figure out how to make change. But man, 3%, doesn't that seem a little expensive? So that's that's a real sad thing. Like I don't know if you play poker at all, but if you're sitting there at the poker table for a couple hours, nobody comes, nobody goes, you look around a couple hours later, all the money's gone. It's like, where did it go? Oh, the house takes a little piece out of every one of those transactions. And before you know it, the money's gone. Nobody's doing well. Next thing you know, you're trying to figure out where it all went, and went to the banks. They win again.
Right. Yeah. The dealer's sitting there with stacks of cash behind them, and everyone at the table is wondering, why am I down to
Right.
nothing?
Right.
That's a great point. And defunding the far left globalist banks. And a big part of what we do at UnWoke.academy is follow the money.
Yeah.
That we track down and we look at corporate behaviors. And I'm not going to presuppose any positions on your part, but from my audience and my message is there are certain things that are happening out there. And I'm going to sort of draw a comparative example. Justin Bernier from National Security Index was guest on this program. He's since become a friend of mine, and his team and people around him discovered that companies like BlackRock were finding their ways around trade embargoes and using retirement dollars from Wall Street, from our retirement savings, 401k, IRA, etc., to seed fund and grow the Chinese Communist Party and grow their military ambitions. So we are literally funding through Wall Street,
right,
the growth and expansion of our enemy, an enemy of ours.
Surely you can understand this is not the first time that the banks have funded both sides of the conflict. They don't really care so much who wins, side A or side B, but they're always going to come out ahead.
Yeah, they make money just like the dealer at the card table in your analogy.
Sure.
So one of the things in the banking realm that people have figured out a while ago, and I would say I'm not completely foreign to it, but I'm not well versed, is the cash exchange apps, things like Venmo, and I think I heard recently Zelle is closing.
And I've heard that too, but I haven't seen anything about that.
I haven't seen it yet, but I keep hearing it from people that I trust, and that makes me think that it's imminent.
Yeah.
But things like it. So people figured out that you can use that thing like Cash App and stuff, and you just put that it's, friend or family member, and you avoid the fees. And that's just direct transfer. Unfortunately, there's no privacy attached to that, but at least we're not giving a chunk of that to banks. So piggybacking off of that, and knowing that a part of our mission at UnWoke.academy is not just uncovering the bad and nefarious behavior, but finding ways to stop funding our enemies. And we've kind of a connected expression that's grown out of that. We call it DIS, the globalist left, which stands for know where you donate, invest, and spend your money.
Donate.
So
got it.
How do we thread that needle? How do we get convenience without giving up, hopefully not giving up privacy, but certainly without giving up some of the capital to global banks?
Well, let me ask you the question first of what priority do you place on privacy as part of that equation? As you look at forms of money, like, okay, it sounds like to me at the top of the list would be, are the banks getting anything out of this? Is it helping them? Is it creating a profit opportunity for them? No. Okay, we're off to a good start. But like you mentioned privacy as well. Where does the privacy question or importance fall on that priority list for you?
I'm going to answer that question in two ways because it will, I think, help guide our conversation. One is personally. Personally, I made the decision a long time ago that I value my privacy tremendously. And I go to great lengths to create privacy and to limit the data mining that takes place on me and my family personally.
Sure.
But beyond that, there's an important discovery that I've made over the last 4-ish years. And not getting too far into the weeds, I have a type of financial services firm called an RIA. That company, my company, has been, well, I'll just put it this way. About 4 years ago, an examination into my company was opened. There's no suspicion of wrongdoing. There's no investigation.
Mm-hmm.
I have battled for 4 years, which has involved a lot of legal expense, etc. It's because I'm very outspoken and conservative.
Right, sure.
That
You're on the radar,
target.
man.
What's that?
You're on the radar. They've got a target on you. Sure. Too many of these conversations, the next thing you know, you find yourself on the SPLC list of hate groups, which I'm on.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I get all kinds of bad press, and I don't know, some media outlets picked up on me and my message, and then it was off to the races. They left have drawn a target on my back, or I may have just drawn it there myself.
Right.
But one of the things that I discovered through 4 years of back and forth, and it's a grueling, it's just a nightmare process. These people are like the regulators that I interact with are very similar to the people out there carving up and blowing up Teslas. They're vicious. And they will literally just stare at me and lie in my face and tell me that I haven't provided documents. I've provided 5, 6, 7 times and lie, etc. But here's the key piece, and I keep holding on to this and I keep mentioning it. Early on, as the regulators who were examining, I'm air quoting that, examining my company, have asked tremendous detail about anybody that I serve, my company serves, who holds or owns crypto. They want to know what platform, where they trade, amounts, which cryptocurrencies they own. So they have actually attempted, and this part of this is a hint for anybody out there who works in finance, follow my lead. Here's what I did. I asked why they're asking those questions. They're unusual. I've been through examinations. I've actually helped other financial services firms navigate examinations similar to this one. I've never seen that before. Them trying to data mine people through me is unacceptable. So I put my foot down, and this is a side note, but it's kind of important. I asked for their reasoning, and they said that under certain there were SEC guidelines, they have the right to ask me anything that they want effectively. Well, I researched that, and under that guideline, it said in the event of an investigation or consideration of possible wrongdoing, they were permitted to data mine and ask for client data in that detail. Well, I actually blocked them using that because they'd already put in writing that there is no investigation. The upshot for me personally is I've not divulged the any detail in that regard showing the crypto holdings of anybody that I do any work with. The fact that they were willing to ask, and the fact that they pressed me on it and wanted great detail about crypto, set the alarm bells off for me. It tells me that they want to know who has something other than US dollars in their holding.
And the reason for that is because crypto is incredibly open, incredibly transparent, incredibly trackable, incredibly traceable. You know, it always kind of shocks and concerns me when people talk about Bitcoin as being private and anonymous and, you know, very secret. And it's like, no. That's the opposite of what cryptocurrency kind of stands for. It's one of the basic premises is that if we publish all of these records, if we publish the transaction history, the wallet holders and the balances, we've got this unparalleled view into finance that we've never had before. You know, when we think about traditional money, the Federal Reserve controls the printing press and they make it whenever they want. They give it to whomever they please. And we don't really have any kind of eyeballs whatsoever on that. Whereas with Bitcoin and most cryptocurrency, it's created through a process that we call mining, right? And then there's a a specific process to that I really can't even try to explain if I wanted to. But the idea is that every time new Bitcoin are created, we know exactly how many there are. We know exactly where they go. And then we can watch in those wallets as those Bitcoins get, divided up into smaller pieces and sent out to different wallets. And you can track it all the way. I mean, you can trace every single Bitcoin all the way back to when it was mined or the very beginning of that blockchain. And so that's a virtue of cryptocurrency that most cryptocurrency participants will promote as a value, as the alternative to the other type of system that we have, which is whoever's in control of it makes as much as they want. We don't know who gets it. We don't know why they get it, but we know that the system kind of works ish, for 1% of whatever value is left in that system. So cryptocurrencies, specifically Bitcoin, they went the entire opposite way. The pendulum swung all the way back the other direction there. And so what they've said is, look, we're just going to give you all the information and let you decide if transparency is more important to you in that conversation than privacy is. And so you're going to find with Bitcoin specifically and most other cryptocurrencies that a lot of that privacy disappears as soon as somebody has your wallet address. As soon as somebody has a trackable, traceable transaction that they can tie back to you, they can figure out everything else from there. And so the game is on to keep your wallet private, because as soon as I have your wallet address, I can trace everything that's ever come into that wallet or left from that wallet and know exactly where else it went. Did you ever hear the story about, Tornado Cash?
No.
Tornado Cash was a service that was shut down by the FBI. The new administration has just kind of reversed some of these things, but it took your cryptocurrency and it spun it around in such a fashion that was actually untraceable. And that was a very popular service with money launderers and other people that are also nefarious in their own way, in their own fields. But the point is that cryptocurrency, like I said, it really promotes transparency. And I like that about it. After 100+ years of being in the dark about the creation of money and who gets it, I would prefer to have a system that's perfectly and infinitely accountable. I mean, down to the last teeniest, tiniest particle of that currency, you can identify exactly where all of it is all the time. There's no question. Now, just to take it one step further, there are things out there called privacy coins. If you're familiar with something like Monero or Zcoin or Ravencoin or a number of other ones that are completely private, and you can't trace the transaction history. They're as private as money gets. And so those types of coins, which are not very popular and they're not well received in the mainstream cryptocurrency community, like Coinbase, like you can't get Monero on Coinbase because Monero or Coinbase doesn't have the ability to go back through your wallet and see all that history. And so there are different coins out there, even inside the cryptocurrency realm, that, like you said, value privacy above almost all else, which is very interesting. Food for thought.
You've answered a question, you at least partly answered a question that occurred to me partway through what you were describing, and that is the narrative that's being sold to us. And by us, I mean the less informed among us who don't really understand crypto.
Yeah.
That crypto is supposedly some big danger because drug dealers are going to use it for international smuggling operations, etc. Sure. And there is a part of that to me, not really understanding the functionalities of crypto and how the exchanges work, which I want to get to also.
Yeah.
I guess at face value, I sort of assume that that's true. How true is it that there's danger in cryptocurrency relative to illicit activities?
I don't know if I would use the word danger. I would use the word truth. The first markets that really engaged Bitcoin when it first came out were gray and black markets. And I was just telling a story earlier about how a business like mine would be pushed into that same arena, unknowingly and unwillingly. So as a coin manufacturer, when you're dealing in precious metals, it's very difficult to get a bank account. when I came back to the US and set up another factory in 2001, I was exclusively manufacturing copper. And so I set up a bank account for my copper business. 3 months later, my bank account was closed. I said, why? I'm not even doing precious metals. I'm doing copper. We don't allow any non-ferrous metals. I'm like, why not? So here I am manufacturing tokens, copper tokens, and my bank account is closed. And I say, you guys are forcing me to think and act like a criminal. If I'm doing something that's perfectly legal, not in any way related to even precious metals, which, okay, there's a high amount of fraud and drama when it comes to precious metals. I understand and acknowledge that. But copper, really? Is copper really that dangerous of a material that we've got to close my bank account? So what do I do? What's a normal guy to do when your credit union, not even like Chase Bank, I'm talking like the local credit union, shuts your account down, says, unfortunately, we don't allow copper manufacturing as a allowed business. What do? You're pushing me over to a direction like cryptocurrency, where you would traditionally think is going to be overrun with drug dealers and money launderers and terror financing and all the other terrible things that you're not supposed to talk about. But here I am, a copper token manufacturer, having to think like a drug dealer because the banks are kicking me out. This is unfair. But just going back to where cryptocurrency started, most of the businesses that engaged it back in the very early days were those types of businesses because they couldn't get traditional bank accounts. Cannabis farming is an interesting one as well. When cannabis legalization started, a lot of people were very cautious and not real sure about that. And then state laws are changing, and whether you're pro-cannabis or anti-cannabis, like if you're not breaking the law, you should be able to enjoy something like a bank account, right? Well, we're not really sure because federally it's still illegal, but statewide it's becoming more tolerated or even law abiding. And so those types of businesses as well are turning to things like gold and silver on one part with things that I was helping them with back in the day, and then also cryptocurrency as well. And so when you're unbanked and you say, well, I want to be able to exchange in a marketplace, I want to be able to trade and accept payment and eliminate obligations of debts to vendors and things like that. What do I do? That's where Bitcoin and cryptocurrency really comes into play, because you've been cast out from the traditional banking realm, right? And so whether you're like me and you've had your PayPal account frozen way too many times than you wish to consider, or you get kicked out of your credit union, you're saying, what am I supposed to do? I got to think like a guy that would traditionally be here because I really can't get those traditional banking services. So setting aside the philosophy of whether the banks are good or bad, which I think they're mostly bad, but just looking at the idea that, okay, barter has grown outside of the local community. Back in the day, we could just trade back and forth with each other. Trades were simple. We could do a three-way trade if we wanted to. Well, we've grown beyond that. We're in a globally connected marketplace today. And so we need to be able to transact from one side of the globe to the other. What kind of money is it that's going to do that for us when, number one, we don't like the banks in the first place after looking at what they've done to civilization over the last, 10 or 100 or 1,000 years. And we couldn't get a bank account even if we wanted to. So what do? We turn to the tools like cryptocurrency. And that's, again, where Bitcoin really found fertile soil back in its early days, because those types of businesses, those types of enterprises didn't have alternatives back then. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of how we got oriented with people thinking that cryptocurrency is really supposed to be tools for people doing illicit things.
Interesting. Thank you for that bit of history. I didn't know much of that. Just flashing back to kind of the origins of the bank perception. Yeah. This is something that I think is unfortunately lost on today's generation. There was, flashing back to, the 1940s and 50s, yeah, banks were pretty universally hated. And there was a movie, I think it was a book originally, there was a movie called Bonnie and Clyde that came out about these people basically attacking banks. And it was a rave success because people hated banks. Well, right. Banks realized that, and there's been a propaganda campaign, I can't call it anything short of propaganda campaign, to try and convince people to like banks. And there is some convenience to it. And I'm not going to tell people avoid banks at all costs, but be skeptical and be aware, as we keep doing with things like our investigations into bank and corporate behaviors, etc. This is me speaking to the my audience for a moment. Be aware that some of the money that's collected by those banks can go into building and developing things that are not good for society and you may not like. So understanding that, I think it hopefully paints a clearer picture of things like what Bobby is describing. The interest in trying to get transactions that don't go through the banks, that are clear, open, transparent, and that we can kind of get our heads around.
Yeah.
So connected to that, I have a question, and as promised, I have more layperson's questions because
Sure.
I don't have other more technically specific questions to ask, and that has to do with kind of just what does it look like? What is the first step for somebody like me? And I'm going to use the browser that I use, Brave. I use the Brave browser, and Brave has a wallet. There's Brave Wallet. I know I haven't used it, but I know it's marketed to me all the time. I can use Brave Wallet, and I can collect currencies in there. So the first, I guess, starting question is, where does somebody go, and what recommendations do you have for somebody who is not already exposed to cryptocurrency to kind of get started with crypto, and how does the wallet work?
Yeah, well, the wallet is the first step. And the default answer to that question today is, oh, just set up a Coinbase account. But we're right back into that same realm that we're talking about getting away from. Crypto took this really strange roundabout way back to where it started, where Satoshi came up with this idea of a peer-to-peer digital currency that was going to disrupt banking as we knew it. And if you start with that basic premise, I love it. I can get behind it all the way. The problem is that when Bitcoin got so big and so valuable, the bankers all of a sudden started paying very close attention to it. And now here we are today with the whole industry almost being entirely owned and controlled by the same institutions that Bitcoin set out to disrupt back in 2008, 2009. Oops. And that's what I say. I say, we have this technology. We have this beautiful thing that allows us to transact with each other with no central authority, with no third party that's going to gatekeep or take a percentage off the top. Like, it's this beautiful thing, and we let it slip through our fingers. We gave it right back to the banks. We got rich, we got greedy, we sold out, and now, I was scrolling through Instagram one day, and there's a picture that says, Bitcoin's going to do to the banks the same thing that FedEx did to the postal service. And it's like, bragging about how great cryptocurrency is for the free market. And then you scroll down to the very next image, and it says, 2025 top Bitcoin holders. Number 1, BlackRock. And I'm like, we sure taught them a lesson, didn't we? And so back to your question, you got to start with a wallet, right? Well, back in the early days, this was tough because what's happening in cryptocurrency is when we remove that central authority, when we remove that Chase Bank mainframe, we start to have to trust the community of participants more than we would trust, the Bank of America branch. And so that's a leap of faith right there by itself. So whether you're going on the App Store and you're trying to find a new wallet to download, or you're shopping on Amazon for a wallet like, the ones we manufacture, whatever it is, you're taking this leap of faith that says, I'm going to trust my friends that are doing this thing more than I trust the modern banker. And that's a bold statement because there's no chargebacks. There's no refunds. There's no I lost my debit card, I'll just go down to the bank and get a new one. Like, there's no redos in cryptocurrency. It's survival of the fittest. It's the Wild West of money and banking. And so that's a hard choice sometimes because the default answer to the question today that you asked is, just go set up a Coinbase account. Go set up a Robinhood account. You can do it through Venmo and Cash App. Like, no. You're going right back to a financial, an elastic money service that's provided by somebody that has the ability to turn off your account anytime they want. They can track it. They can control it. They decide whether or not you're allowed to do it, how much you're allowed, we're right back to where we started. And so for most people today, cryptocurrency is really just an online gambling opportunity. But for the people that are actually using it as money, it's just PayPal. It's just like it's just a PayPal. It's just a way of sending value from one person to another. They're not holding it; they're cashing it out right away. The second or third most popular crypto in the world today is something called USDT, US Dollar Tether. It's just a digital dollar, and it's centrally controlled. And they probably have the ability to turn that one on and off whenever they like. And so, the biggest challenge with getting started with crypto is choosing a wallet that allows you to use it safely, use cryptocurrency safely, get over that trust hurdle, which is a big problem. Like I said, we're trusting the community instead of trusting the modern banker. But use one that is not just run by that regime, one that's not run by the same people that we set out to disrupt in the first place. That's why I started making these products back in 2017, because people were getting into crypto. It was exciting. It was an opportunity maybe even to get rich, but these exchanges were getting hacked and people were losing all of their value because of digital risk. And when you don't have the ability to walk down and do a chargeback and get a full refund when your funds are stolen, it's kind of frustrating. I mean, imagine how disastrous it is to pick the right new coin, have it go up 100x, 1000x, turn $1 into $1 million, and then find out that your wallet was emptied because the exchange went out of business from some goofy haired guy named Sam Bankman-Fried. It's like, man, why? We can't seem to find a break somewhere, right? We like the idea of getting rid of that central banker from the conversation, but at the same time, like now we've opened ourselves up to this digital risk thing. So choosing a wallet is a challenge. And it's not to be taken lightly, because if you go down the mainstream path with Coinbase, you're right back where you started. 100% risk. I don't think with somebody like Coinbase, you have to worry about them going out of business. I think you might even get an FDIC insured account there. But who wants to contribute to that regime, man? That's what we're trying to get away from here, right? And so, okay, I can't use something like Coinbase or Robinhood. So now you got to go dumpster diving on Amazon to find something like this that can actually be trusted. And it's, like I said, it's easier said than done. But that's why I started manufacturing those products 7 years ago, because people needed a way to get involved, but we were always concerned about, counterparty risk. And if you trust somebody like FTX or Sam Bankman-Fried or Coinbase to hold on to your value, number one, they can mess it up and go bankrupt. Or number two, they get to decide if you've, broken the rules that the overlords have imposed on us, and your account's going to get frozen. So we always encourage self-custodian, hold on to your own assets. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. And the product that we manufactured back starting in 2017 is a really interesting one, because it lets you take a digital asset and hold it in your physical hand. And it's a really great bridge between those two very different worlds of digital on one side, physical on the other side, where you can take a digital asset and now you can lock it in your safe.
Tell me more about that. That's actually what I was going to ask next. What is this wallet that you started manufacturing?
Yeah. So in 2012, I made, like I said, the original Bitcoin coin. It's probably the most famous coin in the world today. You've seen it a time or two, I would guess, along with everyone else in the world that's seen it in a scam email or something like that. So it's a very famous coin. And it's, I pat myself on the back that I designed it, but that's what I did for a very long time. I designed commemorative coins. Well, this one happened to take off. Now, I made this coin, and this is great. I made this coin back when Bitcoin was $5 a coin, and I bought exactly 0 Bitcoins, because I'm on that other end of the spectrum. I'm the physical guy. I want to hold on to it. If I don't hold it, I don't own it. And so I didn't buy any Bitcoin back then. I knew about it. I made the commemorative coin that's now the face of all things cryptocurrency today, but I didn't buy any. And so it wasn't until 2017, 5 years later, that I said, okay, I'll dip a toe in the cryptocurrency water. What can I do? I'm not ready to come out with a digital asset. I still don't trust that, but I can make a tool that helps cryptocurrency enthusiasts deal with the biggest problem in the crypto community right now, which is digital risk, right? Forgetting your password, or you write down your private key, which is your backup phrase, and you lose it in a fire or a flood. Or you probably heard the story about the guy that threw away his computer in the landfill, and he's like trying to dig it out now because there's like $1 billion of crypto on it. Like, that's digital risk, right? A hard drive crashes and you go, I didn't have a backup. So I started making these coins, and on the back of each one of these coins, I don't know if I have one here. Yeah, there you go. There's a laser etched code. It's a little QR code. I don't know how well I can show it here. There you go.
Oh yeah, I can see
there's
that.
a laser etched unique code on the back of every single one of these coins. And that laser etched code is what you need to redeem your cryptocurrency later.
Oh.
So suppose for a moment you decide to get in. You say, okay, I'll buy $100 worth. Let's just see what happens. And maybe you do it today, or maybe you did it 10 years ago or 7 years ago, and you embed it on one of these physical copper coins and you put it in your safe. And this is literally the least convenient way of owning Bitcoin. You can't do anything with it. It's got no moving parts. There's no line of code. There's no RFID. I can't tap it to pay anything. It's what we think of as like ice cold storage, right? So in cryptocurrency, we've got a hot wallet, and your hot wallet is going to be on your phone. And then you've got cold storage, which is offline. It can't get hacked. It won't go out of business. And so these are an incredibly inconvenient, but incredibly safe way of owning digital assets. So I created them back in 2017. And that was my little contribution to the cryptocurrency industry. Still don't trust it. I still don't like it. I'm still not ready to get in, but I know how to. I've got an IT background. I understand these things. I understand, what the biggest challenge is, and I made that product to serve the industry, and it's worked very well. Not one has ever failed in the 7 years that I've been manufacturing these things. They work every single time. It's kind of cool, but like I said, you can't do anything with it. It's just an easy way to keep a digital asset safe. That's it. But it is a wallet. So it's a functional Bitcoin wallet. So if you want to grab some Bitcoin, you want to grab a handful, and then you send it to the address that's on the back of the coin. You can see that little QR code there. And then you forget about it. You put it in your safe. You hide it under your mattress. You put it in the sock drawer, and you cross your fingers, and you see where that cryptocurrency goes. Some of them hit, most of them fail, but it's a way of getting started with digital assets the safe and easy way.
So that cold storage can be used as an effective, more safe than wallet. And
that's exactly what it is. It's a perfect, flawless wallet. That's it.
It's a perfect, flawless wallet. So
for digital currencies.
Okay, I think in terms of the traditional terms of currency,
sure.
Is there a way to move from cold storage to hot wallet? So
Absolutely.
let's say that you put $1 million worth onto a coin, which is serving as cold storage.
Yep.
And you decide that you want to have $1,000 worth on your phone. Can you like move it? And so
almost.
Then your phone is.
Yeah, almost. So the challenge with cold storage is that you can't choose how much you take off of it. So there's a tamper evident security seal on the back of the product. When you peel the tamper evident seal off, underneath is what you see with that laser etch code. You can see the tamper evident glue going around the coin there. So when you take that sticker off and you scan it with your phone, you're importing the entire thing then back into your phone. So if you had $1 million on the coin and then you scan that, you'd have $1 million on the phone. They're designed to be single-use wallets. Think of it like a porcelain piggy bank, right? You can add in onto it as many times as you want. But then when you peel that sticker off and you scan that code, you're cashing out one time. And the reason for that is because as soon as you scan that coin, you're back into the world of digital risk, right? I don't know what apps you got on your phone. I don't know what app you chose to scan that coin. Like, I'm hoping it's good and legit and it's not keeping a backup of that key somewhere, but that's what happens. You pull it off of the cold storage. You've got it now back into your hot wallet. You're ready to send, and you should use it one time. And so we make them, we sell them for $20. They're cheap enough so that you could get multiple ones. So like you'd put $1,000 on each one as opposed to $1 million on one, and then have to cash it out every time you need to get access to $1,000.
That's exactly what I was just going to ask.
Yep.
And candidly, in the era of cheap and well, I don't know that they're particularly that cheap anymore, but we did have a heyday there for a while of really inexpensive international flights, people globe hopping. The
right.
idea of having some currency, because I've gone through currency exchanges and they're a nightmare trying
right.
to figure out the exchange rates and
you get ripped off every time.
What's that?
You get ripped off every time. The best thing that I found is just having a bank account with a debit card that's, friendly. But if you're a cash guy, that may not work so well for you either.
So the idea of having something that's internationally recognized in many different countries, and you can just jet over to Europe and use a cryptocurrency is very attractive.
That's one of the best parts about it. The fungibility, as we call it, like I think the Texacoin is the right crypto. But a lot of businesses out there accept a Bitcoin. Okay, well, I can almost instantaneously and almost for free convert my Texacoin into Bitcoin and then spend that anywhere that I want. And so that's one of the things that's great about crypto. So if your crypto of choice is Ethereum, but you're dealing with a merchant that takes Bitcoin, not a problem. It's not like we're trying to figure out how to go from dinar to euros to dollars to Canadian dollar to pesos. Like that's a challenge, man. Does the Western Union or the money changer even have that currency? And what are they paying today? If there's not a big international demand for it, you might not even be able to swap it out. So cryptocurrency almost makes that, a non-issue, almost a complete non-issue, which is cool. Bank in the currency of your choice and then convert on the fly, on demand to whatever you need when you want to monetize it to get something that you want. And you got to remember that the world that I came from is a world where I decided that I was going to throw my hat in this ring, the gold, silver, copper ring, because when I studied what real money was, I decided that money had to have three values. It had to be a unit of account, a medium of exchange, and a store of value. And gold and silver work perfect for those things. And so when I looked at crypto, I was incredibly intrigued because it's kind of a perfect medium of exchange, right? You can send crypto from here to the other side of the world and back almost instantaneously, almost for free. And you don't have to go through a bank to do that. I mean, that's kind of revolutionary. As far as a unit of account is concerned, crypto is almost perfect. If I want to take 1,000-ounce bar of silver and turn that into 1,001-ounce rounds, that's a day's work. I got to melt it. I got to cast it. I got to roll it. I got to blank it. I got to anneal it and burnish it and stamp it. I got to go through all these processes. And then even then, if I put this coin on the desk in front of you, could you look at it and tell me for sure that it wasn't a fake coin? I mean, would you know with certainty that an ounce of gold that somebody trades to you is a real gold coin? Like you'd have to do a metallurgical test on it to really know. But you can't make a counterfeit Bitcoin. It's impossible. The Bitcoin network knows every coin that it's ever made. And if you tried to send in a fake Bitcoin, it just would never get there. You can't counterfeit Bitcoin. If you want to take one Bitcoin and divide it into 1,000 little Bitcoins, almost instant, almost for free, right like that, you can do it. And so crypto is kind of a perfect unit of account. Some 2 for 3. The place where I always got stuck was whether or not cryptocurrency was still a good store of value. And when I first got into it back in 2011, 2012, it was too early to know for sure because it wasn't around long enough. Gold and silver have stood the test of time. They've been valuable for thousands of years. The old saying, you can take an ounce of gold back in ancient Rome and you can buy a toga, you can buy a belt, and you can buy a pair of sandals. And that same ounce of gold today in 2025 will buy you a nice suit, a pair of shoes, and a belt. And then some, So, we have a long timeline to decide that gold and silver are a good store of value. We don't really have that with cryptocurrency because it's still new. But if we look at the timeline that we have now from 2009 to 2025, going from basically worthless to a penny to $1 to $100 to $1,000 to $100,000, we know that it's incredibly volatile, but we have at least a longer timeline to better evaluate that question. The challenge for me was the realization that store of value doesn't mean physical. It doesn't mean inherently tangible or valuable. What it means is that it holds my value so that I can trade it later for something that I really want. Like you can't eat an ounce of silver. You can't put an ounce of gold into the gas tank for fuel. All you're doing with those metals is that you're holding on to that value so that you can trade it out later to buy some food or to buy a tank of gas. And so in order to do that, in order to monetize it, you can't take, an ounce of silver down at the gas station. You can't take an ounce of silver to the grocery store. You got to take it to a pawn shop or a coin shop first and turn it back into money. And then you can spend the money. So we know that those things hold their value over a very long period of time very well, but they don't work as money because the challenge to actually convert those things into money so that you can use it to buy what you really want has a lot of steps to it. With crypto, here's the mind-blowing part. You can spend Bitcoin today at 54 million businesses across the globe. And this is going to play nicely to one of your nefarious actors. You can get a Coinbase Visa debit card and you can tap it to pay at businesses all over the world. Now, it doesn't really help us on the privacy thing and we're not supporting the overlords thing. But as far as a convenient form of money, it's almost unbeatable. And so you look at all those things and you say, okay, there's something here. There's something in this conversation that's worth looking into. And if we can find a way to do that without submitting to or contributing to the success of those very same institutions that Bitcoin set out to disrupt back in 2009, man, we've got a powerful and revolutionary tool at our fingertips. And that's what Texacoin is. Texacoin, like all the things that I told you that you should probably know and love about cryptocurrency, without selling out, without letting that technology slip through our fingers and get handed back over to the overlords, that's what Texacoin is. It's a redo. It's, look, guys, I've been in the honest money conversation for a long time. I did it the hard way with this stuff. I did it at the highest levels. I testified in U.S. Congress before almost everybody heard of Bitcoin about alternative and complementary currencies. This is my life's work. And we were so close to it with Bitcoin. We were so close and we let it slip through our fingers because the guys that started it, they got rich, they sold out, and they let it go. And now we have another chance with Texacoin.
I'm glad you took it there because I was going to ask for more detail on Texacoin, what it is, how it works, and where you're headed with it. But there's a question that occurs to me to ask, connected with protecting you and your venture. So
yeah, I'm not worried about that.
What's that?
I'm not real worried about that just yet. I will be at some point soon. I've lived a great life. I've had a lot of fun. I've raised a family. I've held a marriage together. I've lived all over the world. So I've lived like multiple lifetimes already. So if the overlords decide it's time to take me out because of what I'm doing right now, then I can say that I did it doing what I love and what I thought was important to leave behind for the world, to make it a better place for my children, for your kids, and everybody else's kids out there. Like, I did my part. So if they want to take me out, like, okay, all right. I guess it's just my time.
I have much the same thought.
Back to your question.
I'm excellent. I'm glad to hear that you've had those great experiences. And
yes,
congrats and
thank you.
Good job keeping family together and raising children, being with your wife. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
The question, actually, I'm not going to claim to understand what it is that caused the interest and momentum of Bitcoin to fall apart. I know that there's a lot of complexity and it has to do with exchanges and et cetera, but we got to the point where, as you pointed out, BlackRock owns a lot of Bitcoin and it's really it's a rug pull. What stops that from happening to Texacoin?
Well, leadership is the answer to that question. Who's the leader of Bitcoin? Satoshi Nakamoto, if that is even a real person, they checked out in the first couple of years. Like, they were gone. Charlie Lee, the guy that started Litecoin, Bitcoin showed up, and then Charlie Lee's a guy that was an engineer that made it better and faster, which I think is great. I mean, nobody uses Bitcoin today as money because it's slow and it's expensive. I mean, imagine trying to buy a $5 cup of coffee at Starbucks and the transaction taking 3 hours to go through and costing $6 to send that money. Like, nobody uses it for that, right? So Charlie Lee saw that, and I don't remember exactly the year, but he created Litecoin, which was 4 times faster than Bitcoin. And it was almost free to use. And that was great. That was kind of the light money version of Bitcoin. He saw that Bitcoin, as it grew in popularity, was really more becoming digital gold. And he wanted to have a currency version of that. Well, he checked out in 2017. So that's it. I'm done. Then we had this guy named Roger Ver come along that was really leading the charge in the conversation about unstoppable money. I remember reading an article from his group called 12, not 12 magic words, but 12 words to freedom or something like that. And so somebody cooked up this thing called the mnemonic dictionary. And this QR code that's on the back of the coin represents kind of a 36-digit alphanumeric code. And that code is what we call a private key. And the private key is what you use to unlock your wallet out there in the cloud somewhere to access and spend your Bitcoin. Well, somebody somewhere decided that they could represent this 36 character key with 12 words. And we call this a recovery seed phrase. So if I can memorize 12 words, I can melt this coin, I can disappear it, and I can store the whole thing up here. And I could jump on a plane and go to the other side of the world without even having a physical coin. Even if I tried to hide this thing somewhere, someone's going to scan me and find it. But if I can memorize 12 words, these are my 12 words to freedom. You know, we live in a world today where regimes change, and all of a sudden one guy was a freedom fighter. Now all of a sudden he's a terrorist, and he's got to go in the middle of the night. And I won't say that happened to me, but you know, there I was in Singapore in 2020, operating the largest private mint in Southeast Asia. And then this thing comes along called COVID. I don't understand what it is or what they meant it to be. But now my factory's closed, and I've got millions of pounds of equipment installed at no small cost, and they've shut down my ability to make money. They've turned off my livelihood. I've got to support my family. I'm a foreigner in this country. There's no government handout for me, and I'm now completely stuck. And I can't just pack all my equipment in my backpack and jump on the road and go pull up my laptop and do it from somewhere else. I'm a coin manufacturer, right? So so I think about what happened to me, and I think about how powerful that is to be able to memorize 12 words and get on a plane and go. And then you're on the other side of the world, you know, and you remember those 12 words, and your wealth is right back where you were when you left off. What a powerful thing. That was Roger Ver. And he's gone. He checked out. He made his billions and he's gone. And so the answer to your question is leadership. Here I am, and I've committed 5 years to this project. I've said, look, we've got this great technology. We've got an amazing ability to have a peer-to-peer monetary system. But that guy checked out. He's gone. That guy's gone. That guy's gone. And now it's up to me. Now, the interesting thing about me, like I said in the beginning of our conversation, is I'm kind of the most famous guy in this conversation that no one's ever heard about. I'm the guy that made the original Bitcoin coin back in 2012. Almost everyone's seen this coin. I'm the guy that testified in Congress that same year about alternative and complementary currency. And you should go back and check that out at some point, because I tell the government to leave our money alone. Don't legalize gold and silver. Don't follow through on these legal tender laws that they're talking about. I don't want the government involved in the gold and silver industry. As soon as I fill out a 1040 and there's a line on there to report how much gold and silver I have, that's a problem. I don't want them involved in that. That's not money. Leave it alone. Stay out of it. You've messed up the money. I'm the guy that made the American Open Currency Standard back in 2008. I mean, how many people do you know that started their own private currencies back in 2008? There's Satoshi Nakamoto on the digital side, and there's me on the physical side. I made the original product in 2017 for people that are into cryptocurrency to keep it safe. And so I've been around this conversation for a very long time. Never done a digital currency before. Why now? Because crypto has lost its way. Because the same institutions that it set out to disrupt are right back in the middle of the conversation, and they run and control the whole thing. That's just the first part. Take it one step further and realize that this cryptocurrency mining thing that we talk about, you know, the backbone of trust in the network, is almost primarily controlled now by China. And so it blows my mind to hear that the US is talking about a strategic Bitcoin reserve when it's almost entirely controlled by China. Like, does anyone else care that we're putting a Chinese asset on our books as a strategic reserve? You know, we're talking about maybe getting rid of capital gains taxes on cryptocurrencies that are made in the USA. Great. Which cryptocurrencies are made in the USA? There's one. It's called Texacoin. You know, so this is what I see as being my mission now, to pick up where I left off. Same conversation that I've been having for 17 years now, honest money. But now I built myself a digital currency rocket ship, and I'm setting down for the first time the gold and silver tools that I've used, you know, on this little horse and buggy that I was riding, trying to accomplish this mission of honest money. It's great. It's important work, but I cannot accomplish my goal on something that's as slow as gold and silver. And gold and silver are slow by design. You know, if you've got to physically pass a tangible coin to another person to like barter for some chickens or eggs, there's power in that. There's a relationship there. When you're doing business on the other side of the world with some guy with a cryptocurrency, it's about as cold as it gets. And so we want strong relationships. We want strong community, you know, to be built around these types of things. But at the same time, we've got to accomplish this goal. And if we sit back and we let the bankers and these guys continue to infiltrate and get their fingers gripped even deeper into this beautiful technology, and cryptocurrency really is a great financial technology. You need to think about it first and foremost as a financial technology that allows us to do business without the bank. That's it. That's what we have at its core. Now, if you like privacy, you've got these coins for you. If you like transparency, these coins are for you, right? We've got both of them out there. The amount of creativity in this this ingenious community is really great. And so regardless of which flavor works best for you, the community is creating it. And that community is made up of a bunch of people that don't want the banks involved in these conversations. But at the same time, they're torn because they want to get rich. And the bankers are able to easily make them rich. Bankers just print up a couple $1 trillion and we'll take all that technology right off your hands. Go ahead, have your Lamborghinis. You lose sight of the forest for the trees. And that's what's happened in crypto. And that's my goal to take it back, put it back in our hands.
That's awesome. What a great life mission.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking that on.
Oh, well, I'm having the time of my life, man. It's a blast. I get to talk about something I love morning, afternoon, evening, probably in my sleep as well. So I'm having a ton of fun. And the most fun part about it is that it's working so well. I mean, when you have a conversation with people about cryptocurrency, the ears go up. Everyone's interested. They want to get rich. They want to know. Everyone's just looking for the next thing. Okay, I missed on Bitcoin and I missed on Ethereum and 400 or 500 other ones since then. Which one's next? Is it going to be Titcoin or Fartcoin or Hawk2 Girl? Like, this is what the industry is looking forward to now. This useless, wasteful, stupid rug pull nonsense. And they're just going, what if something real showed up? What if there was a next thing that was run by a guy that actually knows what he's doing when it comes to alternative and complementary currency? What if it wasn't fake? What if it wasn't a scam? The world hasn't found out yet about Texacoin. You can see that because of our price. Like, our market cap is tiny today. And that just means that nobody's figured out what we have yet. But we got it. We got the only exciting thing in crypto today. If you were in Texas, you would see billboards. You would hear it on the radio. We're going live in Austin Airport. We're taking over the Austin Airport with Texacoin. It's the currency for Texas by Texans. And so I'd like to think that it's one of the only exciting things today in the cryptocurrency world. Everything else is just garbage, fun, and there's something to the pop culture aspect that I think is dismissed by mainstream cryptocurrency community members or from outsiders that don't really understand it. The NFTs and the tokens and the meme coins, these are digital collectibles. I don't know what you collected when you were young. It was baseball cards for me. But that's this generation's digital collectible, a fart coin or a tit coin or whatever stupid coin you can come up with. I mean, to you and me, it's nonsensical, but to the young people, it's fun. And it gives them an opportunity to make money if they guess correctly, as it was the same way for me in baseball cards. If I buy the right pack, I get the special card and it's worth something. So someone has to lead the way back to what mattered, back to what was important at the beginning of this financial technology. And I got a new theory on where it came from. If you want to hear my theory, I just announced it publicly yesterday, but it's a great financial technology. And I think that if we get a hold of it, it really has the ability to change the world. And I do believe that with every fiber of my being.
I have a couple of questions and a few comments, but I'm going to put those on hold because I do want to hear your theory.
My theory is that it's a CIA leak. The community of cryptocurrency enthusiasts are kind of torn between, this is kind of a government tool because the CIA has been in cryptography and codes and all that stuff for years. But unless they have the secret key that shuts the whole thing down and turns the whole thing off or whatever it is that gives them ultimate access and control to cryptocurrency, like if they don't have that, and people have been looking since day one to find that, the Achilles heel, like we haven't found it yet. That doesn't mean it's not there. It just means that really great people have been looking for that fatal flaw for a long time and they haven't found it. So if it's possible that the CIA cooked it up, but they may not have a backdoor to give him access to it, why not have the best of both worlds in the theory of its origin? Because we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. What if Satoshi Nakamoto was just the name for some CIA whistleblower that came across the technology and said, man, if the private sector ever got this, this could be revolutionary. And then reached out to private sector code breakers and hackers and frackers and whatever those guys are called, and handed it off to them, and then disappeared, and no one ever heard from him again. I mean, what if we had both of those elements in play? It's my new theory. I like it. I think I'm the first to come up with it. That is my that's my latest theory, because it satisfies both. I could argue either side. I could argue that it's really a CIA tool, and I could argue that the CIA would never let this out because it's too good, unless they have that secret backdoor that we haven't found yet. My theory is the best of both worlds. It is a tool that the CIA cooked up, but somebody brought it out. Some benevolent person found a way to get it out, and now it's out. Now we know. That's my theory.
Interesting. I don't know enough to comment. So I am going to comment on things that I do know, which is just briefly interjecting for my audience that in the realm of speculative buying, and I get the questions all the time, should I buy this crypto or that crypto, and it should be in my portfolio, and what's the thing? And I have the same answer for everybody. It's probably not a terrible idea to have some exposure to some things in your portfolio that you think are unusual and might appreciate in value. Yeah. But anybody thinking that some big thing is going to be the hot new thing and put all your money into something, stop it. Don't think in those terms. Don't buy the thing that says you need to go and buy gold or buy silver or buy crypto. Right. Some exposure to all of that and lots of other types of investments makes all the sense in the world.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, I've seen people lose fortunes in silver. You know, I knew a guy that took his life savings in 2011, put it into silver at $50 an ounce, and then watched his silver go tumbling all the way down to $8. I mean, that's a terrible fall. That's an 80% plus drop. And I've seen that happen. You know, so that can happen in crypto. It can happen in silver. It can happen in real estate. It can happen anywhere and everywhere. You can get incredibly unlucky, or you can get incredibly lucky. I think what happened with the precious metals guys, and why that community is so near and dear to my heart, besides the fact that I've been in that community for a long time, you know, we really were anti-crypto back in the beginning, and we didn't have a diversified approach mindset. You know, have a little real estate, have a little food, have a little survival gear, have a little guns and ammo, have a little bit of everything. You know, you don't know which one's going to be next. Let's go into this with a little bit of a broader mindset and like dabble in some things and emerging technologies and all this stuff. So that if one of them takes off, you could get lucky. But if you close yourself off to that possibility because you hate it, then you're going to miss out. You absolutely need to treat emerging technologies and also emerging cryptos, even the goofy ones, like lottery tickets. You know, pick up $10 or $100 worth of it, but don't go all in on anything. Even Texas coin, even the one that I think is going to be the next one, because the lights could go out tomorrow, and then I don't know what to tell you. You know, the zombies could take over, and all bets are off. So be smart, be careful, be cautious. But leave yourself open to weird things. You know, nobody ever saw the Wall Street bets thing coming with GameStop and all those things. How could you have invested ever in GameStop? I mean, it's like trying to invest in a Blockbuster Video today. Like, you wouldn't do it. It's totally nonsensical. And guys made fortunes off of that deal, you know? So you have to look at it with a diversified approach, first of all, and then look at it with at a fun approach. You know, okay, this seems weird. This seems risky. This seems like it's odd and different, but you know, sometimes the strangest opportunities show up in the least likely of places.
Well put. Thank you for that. That's it's absolutely spot on. One of the key fundamental pieces of anybody looking to grow, maintain, and sustain their wealth, and that is diversified. You need to diversify your portfolio. Don't buy all in on any one thing. And I will say categorically, not that it need matter to anybody, but I put myself distinctly in that category of interest in cryptocurrency only relative to buying power. I see, I'm one of those original people when I first started reading about it, and what did you say, 2009, the era? I started paying attention because if there were an alternative to the paper dollars in my pocket. I wanted to know about it. Eventually, it turned into this thing of like, did you see that Bitcoin is at $1 zillion a coin or whatever? You know, it started to seem preposterous to me. But personally, that's not interesting to me in the crypto realm. I do hope that it appreciates, just like any currency might. But anyway, that's my 2 cents relative to crypto. And I think there's no wrong answer there. It can be either or both.
That the appreciation today isn't based on the same type of market dynamics that we saw and experienced, in the early days. Today, it's all run by the banks. Crypto's down 25%. Why? Because 25% of the people that were really excited about Bitcoin all of a sudden changed their mind? No, it's because the banks and the hedge funds decided that they wanted to tank it, or all the information that drove it up in value was fake money fueled, and now that fake money has gone somewhere else. Like, it's totally different today than it was back in the very early days of basic supply and demand rules. So if you get into crypto today, maybe because of this conversation or anything else, just remember that it's being tossed around in the financial market, tumultuous, storm, just like every other asset that's out there. Don't expect it to do anything based on, normal market dynamics.
The other question I have has to do with the origins. So how you talk about a new coin being made, what is that? How does that happen? What's that?
Are we talking about Texacoin? Are we talking about my coin?
Yes.
Oh, well, that was the result of the years of effort in working to establish my own currency, and finally realizing, like I mentioned, that the world is just not making any new gold and silver coin buyers. I'll give you an example. More than that, a different example. The way that we were so successful back in the day of getting our coin to be used was through fairs and festivals. And so if you think about alternative currency, it's a big nut to swallow. And so when you go to like a fair and you got to buy tickets, it's a pretty easy thing to comprehend. Alternative currency tickets that you get inside of a fair or festival are an alternative currency. Nobody's uncomfortable about using alternative currency at a fair or festival. So that's where we started. We said, wouldn't it be cool if we manufactured half-ounce copper tokens that when you went into the fair, instead of getting tickets, you went up to a coin vending machine and it spits out a handful of tokens. Easy. And they're commemorative and collectible. And so that's where it began. We were very successful with that concept. And that concept kind of died because the biggest event that we wanted to do, like the pie in the sky event for us, was the Addison Oktoberfest. And we said, man, what if? Two things. One, we were able to pitch the city of Addison, which is a little neighborhood here around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. What if we were able to pitch them on this token that they could use instead of the tickets inside of the festival, but the tokens actually were usable after the Oktoberfest concluded? And so people could still swap these tokens around town, kind of like a community currency. That was our thing back in the day. And so I said, well, that would be a great opportunity because I know that a huge group of people are coming out to this Oktoberfest. And so the larger the group, the bigger the spend, the more money is going to be left over once the fair leaves town to circulate around town as the community currency. Okay. Well, somehow, by some stroke of luck, we got a meeting with the event manager for the Addison Oktoberfest. We had like the thing that we would have waited our entire career to achieve was now sitting at a conference table in front of us, and all ears about our token program because they hate their tickets. They're hard to count. People will scam them by, soaking them in water or oil so that they weigh more and that they can't weigh them. They got to hand count like all these tickets at the end of the event. So they're all ears and they're all in. And I said, okay, well, there's just one question left. How many tokens will you actually need to service your event? And they said, well, how do we figure it out? Well, you take your attendance multiplied by the average revenue per person, and that's how many tokens we need for the 3-day event. Okay, well, we have 100,000 people show up across 3 days. Great. And what's the average spend? $40 per person. I said, well, then you're going to need 400,000 tokens. That's a really big contract for us, but we can do it, right? We're going to strive and we're going to get it done. And the lady looked at me and she goes, isn't 100,000 times 40 like 4 million? And I said, yeah. It is. And I closed my notebook and I said, I'm very sorry to have wasted your time. I'll get back to you. And the reality is that 4 million half-ounce copper tokens was impossible for us. It still today would be impossible for us. You're talking about millions of dollars of copper tokens, first of all. You're talking about warehouse full of pallets to store these things in the off season. So logistically, it just doesn't work. And so when we think about, the tools and the mission and the things that we need to do in order to accomplish this goal in a timely fashion, we have to go digital because we can roll out a solution like that digitally today almost overnight. Whereas back in the day, it would have taken us years to manufacture all the tokens that we needed to service that type of event. And I don't remember why I started down this path for this story, but the point is that the physicality of a currency is a big issue that has to be dealt with as you work on identifying solutions that can actually get you to achievable goals. I have no idea if that in any way matches up to whatever question you asked.
It did. It gave some flavor to the origins of creating Texit coin as a new type of coin. But how about the number of coins? So let's say, for instance, and again, this is me speaking in my existing nomenclature and perspective, let's say that you've created 1 million coins. And how do the next million get created?
Well, that's all done through the miracle of cryptocurrency mining. And so Bitcoin, when it was established, set a hard limit of 21 million coins. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins ever in existence. Every time a Bitcoin miner produces a block and crunches the transactions that are taking place on that network into this block of data, which is kind of cool, it produces a reward. And that reward gets distributed to the miners that were involved in creating that block of data. And so what's kind of technically happening in cryptocurrency, because you're not dealing with a central authority, you don't have one place with one database, one ledger to update. What happens when you do a transaction in crypto, you make an announcement to the community. And the community is made up of these nodes and miners. And the miners are listening for these transaction announcements, and they grab them and they start to crunch them. And they crunch them into a block of data. And what happens is whoever's able to crunch all the transactions into a block first puts their hand up and says, I got it. I got the magic code that represents all the transactions in this block. And it's an incredibly difficult and power-consuming process, but that's what's happening. And so whoever gets that block first gets a reward. They get a handful of Bitcoin. In our network, the miner that gets the reward first or gets the answer first gets 254 Texit coin, right? I don't remember exactly what the Bitcoin reward is. I think it's 3.125 Bitcoin per block right now. And please don't judge me if I got that wrong because I don't do Bitcoin. But anyway, that's the idea. And the idea in Texit coin is that we work the exact same way, where we're only ever going to create 353 million coins. The difference between us and Bitcoin is we're going to do that over 137 years. And so Bitcoin is down to its last million coins to be mined. It's almost done. It still has, a dozen or so years left, but we're kind of in the twilight of the Bitcoin network mining these blocks and creating new coins, whereas Texit coin is now just getting started.
Interesting. So it's not you. There are people out there that will pursue the value in creating the blocks that will create the actual Texit coin.
That was the magic of Bitcoin. The magic of Bitcoin was, look, digital money's been around forever and ever and ever, right? Even e-money inside of the realm of outside of the banks and debit cards and check cards and whatever it is that we had as we worked our way into digital money. It's been around for a long time. But no one's ever been able to eliminate the central authority that keeps track of the database of who's got what. That central authority, that trusted third party, has always been involved in that relationship until Bitcoin. That was the magic of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin says, okay, we're going to remove that central authority and we're going to replace it with this mechanism that we're going to call mining. And what happens is you trade your electricity and you trade your computing power. And when you put those things into the network, you say, I'm going to use my electricity and my computing power to crunch these numbers. And if millions of other computers are out there and we're all fighting each other to figure out who's got the highest quality information, and that's what we call Bitcoin mining, right? That's the central idea to cryptocurrency mining, that we use electricity as a raw material and our computers as our production equipment. And instead of getting a physical coin like I get at the end of the day, they get a digital coin, which can easily get put into something like a phone. And so that was the mechanism by which, for the first time, they took the central authority out of the equation. And that, to me, is magical. We don't need a Chase. We don't need a Bank of America. We don't need a Visa sitting there keeping track of everything, skimming off the top of every one of these transactions. Instead, we trust the community of participants. So if you want to participate and trade your computer and your electricity for a reward, you'll get paid to help keep the network safe and secure. That's cryptocurrency mining. And that is something to be celebrated by people that are huge fans of, private enterprise and free market solutions to things that are, kind of monopolistic and controlled by the banks.
I love it. So those are the components that are most attractive to me, and the thing that keeps me hanging on and paying attention. So if anyone who's watched my show for any length of time has heard my words of caution about buying into crypto, because I do hear a lot of people interested in buying into cryptocurrency for the wrong reason, or what I describe as the wrong reason. The hope that it's now at $1 billion a coin, and they hope it goes to $10 billion a coin or whatever. I'm being ridiculous on purpose. The idea that there's some coin out there that has that actual value just seems ludicrous to me. But I want to leave room in the conversation for people that do want to do that. If you want to throw some money into that, do it cautiously. But more to the points that I'm hoping resonate in this conversation today, having something that's a reliable medium in which to use to exchange for goods and services, that is the element of cryptocurrency that's most attractive to me. As the dollar continues to tank, and yes, I'm with you there. I think that I actually feel confident that there are some bad actors, many of whom are within the United States, working to devalue the US dollar.
Sure.
As a side note, anyone who thinks that is a strange concept should look at what happened to the British pound sterling in 1993-ish. It was tanked, and a few people made massive money.
Our friend Soros? Is that the Soros story? Or am I?
Yep, that's the Soros story. Yep.
Very good.
It's a total side note.
Singapore, I had a friend that was well connected with that group that brought me up to speed. I can't remember his name. Jim something. Jim, whatever his name is, was a buddy of mine back in Singapore. But yeah, no, you're right to be absolutely cautious about crypto, because like a good example, when I try to explain this product helps you keep crypto safe offline, blah, 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 blah. Like when I try to explain it to people, if they learned about crypto like between 2019 and today, they don't get it. Why do I need this? I got a Coinbase account. What does your product do that Coinbase doesn't do for me? I'm like, you've missed the whole point in the first word of your question. If you're thinking that Coinbase is the right way to store your wealth, then you're right back to where you started. You're in crypto for a different reason, right? And that's okay. Look, if you want to get rich off crypto, if you're playing it like a lottery ticket, all good, man. There's vanilla and chocolate out there for lots of different reasons, right? But the point is that you understand this product if you understand counterparty risk, if you understand the importance of being in control of your keys. They say not your keys, not your coins. Like this product is designed for the people that are skeptical of the banks and the institutions that have eroded the value of money over the last 100 years. The same guys that are largely in control of crypto today, and then some. So, so skepticism is really important, especially with today's flavor of Bitcoin. If you're thinking you're going to go to Robinhood or you're going to go to Coinbase and you're going to get involved that way, you've already entered through the wrong door. You've entered the conversation for a reason other than something that's intriguing to me. I'm looking at it and saying, whoa, slow down. People say, what's the point of Texacoin? I don't get it. We already have Bitcoin. We already have Litecoin. The whole point of Texacoin is to follow through on cryptocurrency's original promise. Digital, decentralized, peer-to-peer currency. Well, what does it do? Do you secure medical records with blockchain? No. We're doing the money. We're doing the thing that everybody else forgot. Nobody uses crypto today as money. 99% of all crypto that's traded today is just used for speculation. They're just buying coins and meme coins and Hawk 2 girls, and that's it. No one's using it as money. I'm the guy that knows how to get people to use an alternative currency. And I'm doing it the same way we did it before, through the fairs and festivals, through community currencies. We're doing it all over the state of Texas. It's happening right now. Like, it's not something that's a goal of ours down the road. Like, we're having these conversations today about using community currency that's based on blockchain technology. Well, which one? Bitcoin? No. That's the Chinese blockchain. We're using TXC. What's that? That's the Texas-based blockchain, the Made in America blockchain, the blockchain that is exclusively built here in Texas. Why? Because we think it's important to retain control of the network and not give the network over to the overlords. Like, if once we do that, we've lost our way. And that's what's happening with crypto. And that's why we need Texacoin. Because somebody's got to take the money. Somebody's got to make sure that the money stays real and honest and serves the market and the people and the individuals that need it to have honest and fair transactions. And once the money's dishonest, then all bets are off. And that's Texacoin in a nutshell.
Love it. Bingo. Lest I forget to ask, before we disconnect, I want to get a link from you to your testimony. I want to include that in the show notes.
Sure, I'd be happy to. If you search Rob Gray, Ron Paul, you'll find it pretty easily, but I'll send you the link as well. And it's a great little 5 or 6 minute watch. I get to call the people in government that allow the Federal Reserve to exist a bunch of thieves. I refer to the Constitution as the government's employee handbook. Lots of little one-liners in there that you kind of have to listen to a couple of times to catch them all. But it was great, man. It was one of my favorite days of my whole life.
Awesome.
Invited to go in there. I was the last person to testify in front of Ron Paul on his last domestic monetary policy subcommittee hearing ever about what I think was the market's, message to government. Leave money alone. Stay out of it. You'll mess it up. You've messed up everything else that you touch. We don't want you involved. Stay out. We'll do better without you. Thank you.
Well, thanks in advance. I'm a little upset with myself that I've missed that until now, but I'm looking forward to finding that video and watching it myself. And I will include that in the show notes.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about this project. It's like, that was 2012, man. That was August 2nd, 2012. That was 13 years ago, having the same conversation. Like, you can't buy that kind of authenticity, right? It's like, you go back and you watch that, same guy I was back then doing the same thing. I'm just doing it on a digital currency rocket ship today that I built out of all my years of experience. And it speaks to the authenticity of my background in this project, what the roots are that have caused it to become such a sensation almost overnight. We've got a long way to go until we're on the top 10 list, but that's where we're going. And the way we get there is with honesty, transparency, and leadership.
Bobby, I think you said that there is a planned total of 353 million Texas coins planned.
Over
right?
137 years. Right.
137 years. You've given yourself a long horizon. How many exist?
We're living in a time when like AI can just make us live forever, right? You put a chip in my brain or take my brain out and put it inside of like a robot, and I'll be around to see the last block mined in 137 years. 136 now.
How many exist now?
We're about 36 million.
36
million today. Yeah. It's quick in the beginning, and then it slows down through a process called the halving. And so the block reward is cut in half every 6 years. So right now we get 254 coin per block, and then we'll get 127. And then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller over time until, you're waiting years for the last one Texas coin to get mined.
Interesting.
It's an anti-inflationary system. That's kind of part of the magic of it. With the money printer, we don't know how many there are. We don't know who's making them. We don't know where they're going, but we know exactly how many Bitcoin or Texacoin will ever be made. We know where they go. And we know that over time, the amount that comes out actually gets smaller and more difficult to produce. And so, it's kind of a cool system. It's cool once you step outside of the mainstream narrative, whether it's, the nefarious actors that are primarily using cryptocurrency, or it's the mystique and the misunderstanding of the technology itself and the confusing terms and the fact that these crypto kids are driving around Lambos while we're working our butts off all day and they're like in super yachts and stuff. And it's like kind of unfair. Once you get past all that and you see the financial technology and this revolutionary concept where we get to exchange value quickly, easily, almost for free without the banks being involved in that conversation, it's a beautiful thing.
I love it.
It's kind of cool.
It's
I'd encourage you
cool.
to give it another look.
So it sounds like you are in the right place at the right time and the right person for the job.
Thank you. I would say that you're exactly right on all three of those things. I mean, I started this thing about 1.5 years ago before cryptocurrency in the US was a hot topic, before Texas was the center of that conversation. You know, cryptocurrency mining is all about energy. And we've got the best and cheapest energy right here in Texas. We got our own grid. We got our own culture. So the fact that I happen to be in Texas, knowing a thing or two about cryptocurrency and money and all that stuff makes me uniquely qualified to do exactly what I'm doing right now. And again, it's the reason that this thing is going so quickly. Because when I invite somebody to come along and mine with me, they go, "Who are you again?" And I go, "Well, let me tell you a story." And they go, "Oh, okay. I'm not some hacker in a den in Russia somewhere inviting you to participate in the next meme coin. This is a real project run by real people with a real goal and a real mission. And we're expecting it to be really successful."
I have an off-the-wall question. What about heat? So it gets hot in Texas, and the little bit that I do know about crypto mining is that it is heat intensive. It uses a lot of electricity and gets really, really hot. So you have to have very good computers and servers and cooling. Is that, how much of an issue is that?
None anymore. My mind was blown when I discovered this thing called immersion cooling. Have you heard about that yet? They're taking these $10,000 supercomputer ASICs, we call them, application specific integrated circuits, and we're dropping them into a tub of oil underwater, basically. And the oil is 1,600 times more thermally conductive than airflow. Airflow with fans is loud, noisy, and it gets hot. And as the air temperature heats up, the ability to discharge that heat becomes almost impossible. And so I come across this thing called immersion cooling, and it's mind-blowing. You drop your supercomputer into oil. The oil transfers that heat much more efficiently through a heat exchanger like a cooling tower. It's almost silent. It cuts down on the energy consumption by 30%. They run better. It's very expensive. It's not cheap, but it is so cool. And I've become a bit of an expert in immersion cooling. But that's another part of this. Like, I've been in industrial settings for my whole career, 3-phase power and heat exchangers and continuous casting and all this stuff that would be scary to a guy sitting in a computer typing away on a terminal is like, an average day at the office for me. So building the mine was an easy no-brainer. It's work. It's the hard way to create a new crypto, but it's also the real way. And so if you don't have the mind to process the transactions and use the electricity and create the coins, then you're relying on somebody like the bank or China to do that for you. And we don't want that.
So that goes back to one of my earlier questions, which had to do with how you insulate this from foreign interference, like BlackRock or the Fed or somebody. So you're primarily taking on the initial stages of the mining yourself internally.
Yeah, we have our own community of people that are helping build the mine. We're expecting to build what will be the largest privately owned mine in the world. It'll be right here exclusively in Texas. And it's an endeavor, but we're off to an incredibly great start, and it's going well. It's growing about double every month. But really the key element to our system is what we call a permission blockchain. And what that means is that, like, if you're the big bank or you're China, you just can't jump in and start mining our coins and take over control. Whoever's got the greatest computing power and the greatest electricity is able to take the rewards. And so that's how Bitcoin works. And so that's why China controls Bitcoin, because they manufacture the chips that you need to mine it, and they have free communist electricity. So why not mine it, right? And so with our network, we're what's called permissioned, where you can't just jump in if you want to. You have to go through the front door to get there, and it's an endeavor to keep it secure. But that's what we've built. We built a coin that can't be mined by the banks, can't be mined by the foreign nations. It's mined by individuals only.
I'm glad that came up, because Well, at the beginning of our conversation, I would not have known to ask that question, and
Sure.
I would not have understood the answer.
It's the most important part of the whole thing.
Awesome.
The problem that Bitcoin has is that they're in this race to infinity of zero. And what that means is, like, if a Texas data center says we want to start mining Bitcoin, and they add, a server farm, an acre of computing power, China adds 5. If we had 5, they'll add 100. Like, they're just, you can't outcompete them because they make the chips, especially now with tariffs and all this other stuff that makes it more expensive. Oops. So you just can't do it. You can't outmine China. And that's why it's even more ridiculous that the US is talking about strategic Bitcoin reserves. It's like, why? We can't competitively make Bitcoin. We can make our own coin. The only challenge we have is to create value for our coin. Okay, well, everyone's trying to get the meme value up. Like, if we trade this baseball card for that baseball card, then people will want our base. No. Let's just use it as money. Take the mainstream example. If I go downtown and I spend $100, the merchant gets 97, and that money is going to jump around 1 or 2 or 3 times max before it ends up at Walmart and is gone. Then the money's gone. We're never going to see that money again. With a community currency, we have this thing that's much more likely to get traded and circulated locally. 40, 50 times it'll circulate around town before it jumps and goes to Walmart, right? Well, if we can do it digitally on a blockchain that we control, then we don't even have to pay the overlords that 3% every time that money moves around. We could take our dollars and we could sit them down at a local community bank, for example. And we could say, hey, local banker, hold on to this cash for me. It backs up the digital coins that are bouncing around the Main Street vendors that are in our community, right? And you can, like, loan it out if you need to, and you can pay us interest on it if you need to. Like, if that part of the conversation is okay for you, then that's a way that we can do it. But we're keeping all of that locally. I don't know who the banks are that are controlling the cash that supposedly backs up USDT. There's $140 billion maybe out there that backs up the third largest cryptocurrency in the world. I've never seen that money. I don't know what they do with that money. I don't even know if it's real. But why would we trust the banks to do that when we can just do it locally? Just go sit the cash down in the mayor's office if we trust the mayor. And then let's just use this local convenient medium of exchange so that we can transact and trade value with each other. That's it. That's all we have to do. And we win.
People power.
It's that simple. Somebody just has to be dumb enough to do it. And that guy's me. And I'm having a ton of fun. So don't feel bad for me.
I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
So this conversation has been a whirlwind of learning and information.
I hope it just puts a little wedge in the door. Don't write off cryptocurrency because of all the things they said, a lot of the things that are confusing. I get it. It's confusing technology, private keys, public keys, 2 factors, hot wallets, cold storage. Like, it's a lot, right? But if we put the blinders on, we're going to get dragged into it one way or another, kicking and screaming. Let's figure it out, and maybe let's take back control of it. Let's take it and use it for good, the way it was probably intended, based on my little theory.
That seems like the smart approach. Rather than let bad actors develop whatever it is that we end up being having foisted upon us.
That's exactly right.
We need you to lead the way because you understand the marketplace. You understand this stuff and how it works.
That's right.
So please guide us. People like me that don't understand it.
God forbid I'm right. We get to make money along the way. Maybe we even get rich along the way. And there's nothing wrong. My friend Rafael Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz's dad, says there's 3 things I can tell you about money. Number 1, it's better to have it than to not have it. Number 2, it's better to have more of it than less of it. Number 3, it's better to have it sooner rather than later. And so let's open our eyes up. Let's explore these things that have seemed a little uncomfortable and a little unfamiliar, a little foreign. Let's take ownership of them. Let's dissect them to the point where we can actually use them as powerful tools to either transact with each other and cut the banks out of that conversation, maybe create something valuable for our community to cut the banks out of that coverage. There's no reason for them to be here. They've messed it up. Why do we go, oh, thanks for Zelle. Thanks for Venmo. Thanks for this new Cash App thing. We bow down to these guys. That's what's so ridiculous today about going to the big Bitcoin conferences. Guess who's going to be the keynote speaker at our event? It's going to be Jamie Dimon. He's the CEO of JP Morgan. I'm like, what are we doing? Why are we celebrating this? Who thinks that this is an accomplishment for the guy that we wanted to dethrone showing up now as the keynote speaker? Good job. We won.
Is that real? Is that really happening?
100% real. 100% real.
Holy, I didn't know. Didn't
Yeah.
know. So crypto, as you can tell from well, pretty much everything I said during the course of this conversation has been off radar. Well, not entirely off radar, but it has been outside of my ability over the last many years that it's come up to really absorb enough information to be competent in crypto until today.
Now, just remember, this is all coming from a guy that refused to acknowledge it for at least a decade. At least a decade. I was that guy. So it took me 10 years to wrap my mind, at least minimum, around what we're talking about today. So I don't expect to win you or anyone that's listening to this over in, the hour or two that we've had to talk about it, but just let it go in there as that opening wedge. If you try to go through the main opening of the crypto conversation, you've lost the whole thing. Coinbase, BlackRock, all that stuff. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the financial technology at the core of cryptocurrency that allows you and me to exchange something that we find valuable with each other without going through the banks. That's it. Start there. And the rest that you may discover will probably lead you back to this conversation where we're saying, okay, well, that's cool, but they did that. And that's cool, but somebody ruined it that way. Which one's the right one? That's what I went through. I said, okay, I'm getting out of gold and silver. I'll get into crypto. I don't know. I don't get it, but I'll figure it. Which one? Oh, they're all controlled by China? Never mind. I'll start my own. Thank you very much. Blank slate, copy of Litecoin. That's where we began. We said, we're building the mine. We're doing it here in Texas. We've got to do it. We've got to start over. We had it. It slipped through our fingers. We've got a second chance. It's called Texacoin. Discover it at texacoin.org if and when you like.
I'll also include a link to that in the goodies, texitcoin.org. That's super easy.
Thank you.
And as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity is the mother of invention. You have created the thing, or recreated the thing.
Recreated
that
is exactly
slipped through our
right.
fingers and was really needed.
I'm nobody special. I'm just a guy that knows how to do it. A guy that has been working on honest money for a long time. And, I put together a couple pieces of a puzzle that are out there to make something that's beautiful. And I offer to the world for your consideration. And if you think that it's great, then come join me and let's have some fun with Texacoin.
Beautiful. Bobby, thanks again for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'll see you again.